Right now, we're going to show you how the first round of your fantasy football draft should go. We're going to do 2 mock drafts here. 1 casual league format, 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 flex, half PPR. For those of you guys play with your redraft buddies, ESPN leagues, Yahoo leagues, Sleeper leagues. And then the second mock draft, we're going to do more sicko formats, 3 wide receiver start, full PPR, 2 flex, start 9. That'll be a little bit more mirroring like an underdog fantasy draft, or like I said, more sicko type of drafts. But Danny, we're going to get things kicked off with the casual league. You know, everybody's probably starting to come back to the scene. We're into July now. People are probably thinking about fantasy football. I'm going to get us kicked off with the first overall pick in this draft, who I think should be the 101 in half PPR, shallow league formats. And that is my running back 1, Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, there's 3 possible guys that could go 101 for me in most casual leagues, and that is either of the top 2 running backs, Bijan or Saquon, or Jamar Chase. The reason I pick Bijan is because I think he has the highest ceiling of any half PPR asset in fantasy this year. 20.1 PPR points per game last season. Top 5 among running backs with 72 targets. So you know he's getting that receiving volume. And you also know he was number 1 in weighted opportunities per game. So the receiving side, the total yardage, the talent, the touchdown scoring ability. The only real concern you could possibly have about taking Bijan Robinson 101 for me is that, okay, maybe you like the Eagles offense better, and that's why you would favor Saquon. Maybe you like Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow's connection better, and that's why you'd favor those guys. I am personally okay taking the risk on Michael Penix being a serviceable quarterback because I saw how Bijan was used, and he is the true definition of a true workhorse running back to me.
Yeah, and for those of you wondering, obviously you could check our rankings on the site, but specifically when you ask us, hey, I'm in a half PPR league, these are the lineup settings. I'm in a full PPR league, these are the deeper settings. This is how the difference is for me. In a half PPR, shorter lineup league, the running backs that get all the touches are absolute gold. And you'll see it, for example, with Bijan Robinson. He was number 1 in weighted opportunities last year. You are getting that receiving workload, which, yes, it matters less in a half PPR as opposed to a full PPR, but you still want him to get touches. Bijan Robinson, he's in the prime of his career, elite talent, tethered to a good situation in Atlanta. I do think in a half PPR lineup setting type of league, like we're discussing right now, he should be in that discussion to be the first overall pick. He is my running back 1 off the board, and I'd also take him at 1.
Yeah, for sure. So you're on the board with 102 here. And again, we'll go into the player takes and kind of the nitty gritty of it throughout both mock drafts. So maybe we can even skip over some of the player takes for the first mock, talk about it in the second mock kind of thing, just so we're giving some analysis on both cases here. Who are you going with the 102 here?
So like I said, because in this type of format, you probably want to be starting 3 running backs a week out of your 7 lineup slots. I do think volume is king. You get Saquon Barkley tethered to that Eagles offense. I think he's a very strong candidate here. It would be between Jamar Chase and Saquon Barkley for me. When you're looking at last year, for example, in 2024, Saquon Barkley had about 21.2 half PPR points per game. Jamar Chase had about 20. Now, obviously, when you bake in some of the risk, older running back, he could potentially break down Jamar Chase, tethered to Joe Burrow in the prime of his career. I do think this is a very big discussion point. I'll lean Chase here, but I think either of Saquon Barkley versus Jamar Chase is the appropriate option.
Yeah, and like you said, in a start 7, 2 running back, 1 flex, half PPR scoring usually means, give or take, 55-ish% of the time, you're going to want to start a running back in your flex as opposed to a wide receiver. Whereas in full PPR, start 3 wide receiver, start 2 flexes, you're probably going to want to have like 5 receivers in your fantasy lineup on any given week, which means that your running back slot is like 2 of 9 spots as opposed to 3 of 7. So that's why the running back position is more valuable. And also, too, I would have personally potentially gone with Saquon Barkley because especially in home leagues, by the time you get to the 211, you might be shit out of luck at the running back position. You know what I mean? And your league mates are going to be chasing your Saquon Barkley asset in this territory. And you're probably going to get some nice wide receivers. Man, start 7 half PPRs. You're going to have Drake London, BTJ probably fall to you at the 211.
Well, that's what I mean. Part of the factors, I'm baking in the fact that I can get maybe a Jacobs, I can get a Chase Brown, I can get one of those running backs at the 2-3 turn that I'm so confident in. It really just depends in the dynamic of your league. If you think it's more likely a Lad McConkey or Drake London were to fall there as opposed to one of those 2 running backs I mentioned, take Saquon Barkley here, take whatever wide receiver falls back. Just given how drafts have gone for me, I noticed that I don't have access to Lad McConkey or Drake London, which kind of made that decision. But really, to me, given the workload complex at running back and a half PPR and given what Jamar Chase did last year, take either of them and you're happy.
Yeah, again, the first round's going to set up kind of whatever you do for the rest of the draft. So in my estimation, most of you guys listening to this part of the video probably know that a guy like Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, those guys would be off the board by the end of the second round. So that's why I think the best available player that comes back to you is probably going to be potentially even a Nico Collins, BTJ, Drake London type. Like in half PPR formats, I think you'd be surprised how high Jacobs and Chase Brown and Breece Hall and some of the guys in that fringe kind of back end RB1 territory. Like we've seen leagues like that where those, 12 running backs off the board by the 15th, 16th pick.
For sure. But you go Saquon Barkley, I mean, pretty crystal clear, like I said. 21.2 half PPR points per game, tethered to that offensive line, big time workload. Maybe even see some more positive regression in the touchdown department. 11 separate times last year, he got stopped on the one. It did not end up converting the touchdown. So who knows? Maybe a couple, 3 or 4 of those go his way, and you're looking at 21.2 points per game, maybe being closer to 22.5, 23.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Saquon Barkley, the 103. You're on the board with 104. Again, we've talked about the top 6 tier of, usually in full PPR leagues, it's that top 6 tier. Are you going to deviate out of that? Or are you going to go with one of those guys here?
So after Chase off the board, my next 2 wide receivers would be CeeDee Lamb and would be Justin Jefferson. And I do think whether you go that direction or you go the direction I'm going to go, I think it's a fine option either way. But in a half PPR, given the fact that the implied upside for Jahmyr Gibbs is quite literally in week 17 being the guy you need, I do think he has to be the pick here in half PPR. 19.8 half PPR points per game entering year 3. Yeah, sure, there are concerns. Ben Johnson leaving, Frank Ragnow retiring. But like we mentioned, in a half PPR setting, if David Montgomery misses any time, he can score 26 half PPR points per game in that stretch.
Yeah, not to mention, I think as we've seen in Jahmyr Gibbs' career so far, year 1, it was a pretty even split. Year 2 favors towards Jahmyr Gibbs. Who knows, man? Gibbs is still getting better every single week, every single game.
What if he's Jamal Charles?
Yeah, what happens if Jahmyr Gibbs is now the guy that you need in Montgomery fades into handcuff territory as opposed to it's a split backfield down the middle? Because you never know. Ben Johnson might have been the one beating the drum for giving David Montgomery that many dirty carries. And I do tend to think, as I've kind of made reference to on numerous occasions, that Montgomery's a little overvalued. And by that token, maybe Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit undervalued because he probably takes another step forward, has another big spike in his workload. And also, too, like what's king in half PPR? Touchdowns and big plays. And Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, and Bijan Robinson are near the top of the list for those 3 things.
For sure. And again, you'll see how this differs in this top 6 once we get into the full PPR deeper lineups. But given the shallow nature and given the scoring setting here, I do think 3 running backs in the first 4 picks is probably how a lot of your guys' drafts are going to go in this setting. I mentioned the comp to Jamal Charles, by the way. In 2013, they didn't have half PPR as an option. It was just standard or it was PPR according to Fantasy Pros. And in 2013, Jamal Charles, 25.2 PPR points per game and over 20 standard points per game.
Yeah, no, he's a beast, man. Again, we've talked about it before. The top 6 in full PPR for us is a tier. You brought up the 2 receivers. Yep. I will say, I don't think it's crazy to take a running back ahead of Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb in half PPR, start 7, bog standard here. Yeah. Whoever your RB4 is. For me, that's Devon Achane. For you, I believe that's Christian McCaffrey. Some people have it probably as Ashton Genty or even potentially Derrick Henry, given that it's half PPR and a start 7. I think it's reasonable that you could go with those guys as high as this. I personally am going to take Justin Jefferson, who is my wide receiver 2, off the board right now. And
you change that?
Yeah, I did change it. Yeah, I'm going to roll with. I go back and forth on Lamb and Jefferson all the time. For me, it's just the projections say Jefferson. My heart says that Jefferson's the better receiver and is a little bit more of a safe floor. In half PPR, start 7. Maybe you'd argue go for the ceiling. You can catch
go for the touchdown equity.
Absolutely. You could argue it in either direction. I really don't think you can go wrong with these 2 guys. If you like one over the other, go with that one. Obviously, I'm just going to put in Lamb now because I know that's the direction you're going to go.
Yeah, I'll rib you for it. All jokes aside, I think whether you have Jefferson 2, whether you have Lamb 2, I think those are the clear cut 2 and 3 right now. Like I had to see on Twitter some guy like, oh yeah, CeeDee Lamb's like actually a tier 2 fantasy wide receiver. It's like, get the fuck out of here. None of that shit. All jokes aside though, I mentioned touchdown equity. I'm fully confident if Dak Prescott plays 17 games, he will throw for 30 plus touchdowns, 4,500 plus yards. We've seen 12 plus touchdowns being scored by CeeDee Lamb when he was the clear consensus #1 player in fantasy, literally in 2023. To me, it's just an easy bounce back to bet on. I have a jersey in the background, of course. Leave it in the comment section. Haha, cowboy bias. I get it, Danny, cowboy bias. But I mean, at the end of the day here, if I'm getting a threat to be the #1 player at the 6th overall pick, that's what we call value.
Yeah, and don't worry, you can save the cowboy bias stuff for the next draft because I know how high you're going to take him in the
Oh yeah.
PPR one, and it's going to be higher than this. Spoiler alert. So those two receivers, pretty box standard, pretty straightforward. Everyone knows why they're going that high. This is the first decision point, and you and I have often talked about the 7th pick not being the best pick in the first round. If you guys are wondering what is the best spot to pick from in this specific league format, Danny, what do you think is the best spot to pick from? We'll talk about the same question in the next draft, but to me, the best spot to pick from is in the top 3 to 4, like we talked about with that top receiver and those 3 top running backs. To me, that's the best spot to pick from in half PPR shallow leagues.
That's a reasonable spot. Again, whether it's full PPR or half PPR, I still absolutely love the turn this year because you can get an anchor at either spot. We'll talk about, some of the running backs. You have obviously a different running back 4 than I do, but we both agree that the running backs 4 to 6 are your best access to elite upside outside of those top 3 guys. To me, it's pretty clear. Like once you get to RB7, I like Derrick Henry. I don't think he can break fantasy football like the top 6 guys will. So to me, if I can get one of those guys, plus you mentioned the name Nico Collins, you mentioned the name, Drake London, you mentioned, BTJ, Malik Neighbors. If I can pair one of those running backs with one of those elite wide receivers, I feel super confident in a start 7 format, knowing that 2 of my lineup players are a threat to be number 1 at their position.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, first decision point here is at 107 for me.
Yep.
Is it Devon Achane or Ashton Genty, who are my RB4 and 5. And especially when you factor in that it's half PPR, Achane going to lose a tiny little bit of value in that format because he is primarily, like, he led all running backs in receiving targets last year. Christian McCaffrey also primarily going to get his value out of the receiving game. Whereas of these 3 running backs who are in this territory for me, and you could even include Derrick Henry into this as well, Genty probably has more carries, rushing yards than Achane and McCaffrey, if I had to guess. I think he'll probably get more work on the ground than those guys, which in half PPR is going to go a little bit of a longer way. And then at wide receiver, you could factor in, Puka Nacua, St. Brown, Neighbors, whatever wide receiver you like here. I am going to still lean with my RB4 and full PPR, RB4 and half PPR, and that is Devon Achane. But I would prefer Genty to McCaffrey in half PPR, but in full PPR, I'd probably prefer McCaffrey to Genty.
You might not like my next pick then. We could just put Christian McCaffrey right on the board right now. We'll talk both in conjunction because I think obviously they have different cases, but we can both acknowledge that if they are fully healthy for 17, given the situations that they're in, they could be 22 plus half PPR point per game type of players. For Devon Achane, obviously Jonnu Smith being dealt. We're recording this the day after. We saw the offense transition for the Miami Dolphins. Offensive line wasn't playing well. Tua was off the concussions. They really just resorted to a screen pass offense. Obviously, Devon Achane was a beneficiary in terms of his overall touches, but the ground game was not efficient at all. Jonnu Smith was soaking up, 10 targets per game down the stretch last year. With that volume gone out of this situation, Achane can now be much more efficient as a rusher, but still have a stranglehold on those screen targets. We know Tyreek Hill is going to bounce back. We know Jalen Waddle is going to bounce back. So Devon Achane still having access to top 3 target share on this team, on top of getting 18 carries per game, 17 carries per game. He's a very strong case. And obviously with McCaffrey, the proof is in the pudding. He was quite literally the number 1 scoring skill position player. I said CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey was the running back 1.5 PPR, outscored CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb actually outscored him, I believe, in full PPR. But either way you slice it, he was the number 1 scoring player in 2023. He has access to this 49ers offense. We know how Shanahan wants to utilize him when he's healthy. And it's just unfortunate we didn't see him healthy last year because I still think that game-breaking number 1 player in fantasy could exist if we see the 49ers bounce back, which we both believe they can.
Yeah, and especially in start 7 half PPR leagues, you're okay taking the swing on Christian McCaffrey.
Name equity too.
Yeah, name equity. I mean, you're okay taking the swing on McCaffrey mainly because, after your first 7 or 8 picks or so, you're just going to be drafting upside anyways. You can make up on the back end. Maybe you lose McCaffrey. He only plays 13 games next year or something like that. I personally prefer Achane just given the insulation of the player because he's younger. And Achane too, one thing that people don't really talk about with Achane, he got there in 2 different ways, his 2 seasons in the NFL so far. His first year, it was big plays, efficiency, touchdowns, 70-yard touchdown type of stuff. Second year, the rushing efficiency completely fell off the face of the earth, like you said, because the offensive line wasn't good. He played games without Tua. But even when Tua was out there, it was receiving touches and, used as a receiver. Like he had 592 receiving yards last year. I think the fact that Achane could bounce back from an efficiency standpoint, plus get all that receiving touches, like the first thing they asked Tua, what do you need to do this year to stay healthy and take care of yourself? He said, I got to get the ball out quick. He already gets the ball out faster than any quarterback in the league. So that means a lot of targets for Devon Achane.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he's been coached up with McDaniel. And on top of that, I mean, McCaffrey is a risk, but if you take what he did in 2023, he was a better fantasy asset than Saquon Barkley, who just went third overall. So it depends what you value. To me, 28, 29-year-old running backs are going to be inherently risky anyways. I get the Achilles tendonitis, the PCL sprain, fresh in people's brains, recency bias. Obviously, it happened in 2024, but this is a discount. This guy was the clear number one pick going into last year for a reason. I don't think his case has changed.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. He is the same injury risk going into last year's fantasy drafts as he has going into this year's fantasy drafts. And he had the same real injury risk going into 2023's fantasy drafts when he was the number one fantasy scoring running back that year. The only difference now is that he's a little bit older, but he didn't tear his Achilles. It was just tendonitis. He should be fully recovered and fully healthy from it. I'm going to stick at the running back position, and I'm going to take Genty here because I do think that Ashton Genty, 6th overall draft capital, Geno Smith comes in, stabilizes the quarterback position, quietly a top 10 to 15 offensive line in football as well. He's actually running behind a good line. They have Brock Bowers, who's an excellent run blocker, Michael Mayer, the second tight end, an excellent run blocker, and Jacoby Myers, Jack Besh, excellent run blocking receivers as well. This is going to be a very run-heavy offense in my estimation, and probably a pretty efficient offense too, because Geno's a good quarterback, top 15, top 20 quarterback in the league, and he can keep this thing moving. Chip Kelly, we saw what he did with the 2 Ohio State running backs last year, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Imagine if both of those guys were one person, and that's what Ashton Genty is going to do for the Las Vegas Raiders this year. I think that the Raiders could surprise some people and be a solid 8 to 10 win team. And I think it's going to be on the back of who I would estimate to be the offensive rookie of the year.
So I mentioned this when we did our top 24 running back rankings video, but I mean, you just look at the historical hit rates of running backs of this prospect caliber. Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Genty, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, obviously, you're going to be familiar with this data because quite literally it's the FSE grade. But when you take the average of those other 5 running backs in their rookie seasons, you'll get to the fact that on average, obviously, we frame this in full PPR. I haven't done it in half PPR, so keep that in mind. But in full PPR, it was 18.5 points per game. And then when you add the context that in his first year, Bijan Robinson had to split time with Tyler Algier. In his first year, McCaffrey, was getting sniped by Cam Newton. Jonathan Stewart was still a factor. When you remove those two who had contextual cases for why they didn't get a full workload, 21.17 points per game between Saquon Barkley, Leonard Fournette, and Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, and those 3 guys, it was very clear that they were going to start from day one, and that's also very clear that Genty is going to start from day one. Who's taking touches from 33-year-old Raheem Mostert, who can't stay on the field? Like, they have nobody. They have absolutely nobody. Genty is going to carry the football probably 300-plus times, and I mean, Geno's not a very mobile quarterback. He'll probably add another 60, 70, 80 targets through the air. So I can legitimately make the argument that Genty could go as high as 4th or 5th overall, legitimately. Across. If you think he's RB4, you could probably take him ahead of Jefferson and Lamb, and I wouldn't really disagree with you too much.
Like, realistically, you could make the argument that, I mean, like, depending on how your league behavior is, if everybody loves running backs, you can make the argument that the first 6 picks should be a running back.
Yeah, and given the scoring format here, like, I would assume most people are in leagues where everybody loves running backs. And the only thing you don't want to do, which we talk about usually in the lens of like full PPR and deeper leagues, the only thing you don't want to do is try and play catch up when your league mates already have way better running backs than you. If there's elite wide receiver talent on the board, like, there's going to be some leagues that have formats like this where Lamb and Jefferson might be on the board 108, 109, 110 because everybody's just hammering running backs the whole way off the board.
Yeah, and then at that point, it's like people say the term, and people have said the term in fantasy, running backs are scarce. That applies to a start 7.5 PPR. We'll talk about how it changes once you add a couple flex spots. You add maybe a 3rd wide receiver spot. You bump it from half to full PPR, where the majority of these wide receivers are going to be outscoring the running backs anyways. But in this specific format, you can argue a running back at every pick in this range.
Yeah, not to mention, like we said earlier, running backs are probably 3 of your 7 starting spots, 42% of your starting lineup. In other formats, they're probably 22% of your lineup, 2 of your 9 starting spots or whatever. So that's why it factors in. Next pick, Danny, what are you thinking here? You're going to go with the 4th receiver? You're going to go with maybe another running back here? What are you thinking?
So to me, this is pretty clear cut. Now, obviously, in a lot of your guys' home leagues, maybe you see a Derrick Henry go here. Maybe you see, a Josh Jacobs get pushed off the board. Like, I can see that being the case. To me, those guys aren't on the level of these top 6 running backs. So I pivot back to the wide receiver position. Like we said, half PPR, touchdown equity matters. I'm getting access to the best offense of these 3 wide receivers on a player I still believe is elite. Give me Puka Nacua of the LA Rams. I believe in Matthew Stafford. I believe in Sean McVay. I've talked about the fact that Devontae Adams being brought in can actually only benefit Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua, people talk about, well, him and Cooper Kupp are interchangeable. Like, that's what they've been used as. Puka Nacua only played 29% of his snaps in the slot. Now having a true X wide receiver like Devontae Adams, we could see a lot more slot opportunity. We could see a lot more, quick routes, get the ball in his hands. Obviously, Cooper Kupp, if you remember in week 1 last year, was literally just running, drag routes and fucking whip routes and shit. Imagine we get Puka Nacua on that diet.
Yeah, no, it would be fun to see, man. I Puka, spoiler alert, when we do the full PPR one, I'm going to be taking him high because I can.
Yep.
You're going to disagree with it. I can make the argument he's the second best receiver in fantasy this year. I could make the argument.
You make the argument he's the first best then.
Yeah, Chase is just so safe, so it feels so hard to do it. But you can absolutely get me there on Nacua over Jefferson and Lamb. You can get me there. Full PPR probably only because he's very much a PPR chain mover type of wide receiver. But in half PPR, he's still very valuable and should go at the end of the first. I'm going to take the last running back who I think is worthy of going in the first round here, and that's Derrick Henry. Because in half PPR, the dude averaged like 5.9 yards per carry, rushed for like 1,900 yards, and is like an absolute walk for 20 touchdowns this year. So it's hard not to take Derrick Henry in the first round, and I think we would be foolish to not take him in the first round.
I'm curious. We were looking at the projections earlier over on Underdog, and what was his advantage in terms of rushing yards as opposed to the field in terms of his projection?
So I think his rushing yardage total was over 1,350, if I'm not mistaken. And I think his touchdowns were like 12.5 or 13.5 or something like that. Right. I didn't look at the other top running backs, but I would venture a guess to say that only Saquon Barkley is higher in either of those 2 categories, if I had to guess.
Which goes to show, because you sort strictly by half PPR scoring last year, and we got where is Derrick Henry here? So Derrick Henry 2024. Sorry, it was on 2023. My apologies. 2024, he scored 19.2 half PPR points per game. Literally scored more half PPR points per game than Bijan Robinson, who went first.
And again, there's splits with Bijan. He was, back half of the season, he was better and all that kind of stuff. But the real appeal for Genty, for Gibbs, for Bijan, for Achane and McCaffrey is the fact that what they do through the air versus what Derrick Henry can't really do through the air. So that's why Henry gets a huge bump in half PPR. And again, I wouldn't be shocked if people were to take him RB4, RB5, RB6 off the board. I personally would still take those other 3 running backs, but he's definitely in that tier for me in half PPR scoring formats. Danny, let's put the button on the first round. Who you taking here?
This one's pretty obvious to me, at least.
I know exactly who you're taking. I'm just going to put him in now.
Just put him in. I wish I had the jersey on me right now so I can show it in the camera. But all jokes aside, Nico Collins, that's my boy. Touchdown equity, big-time X wide receiver. I think we could see even more versatile usage this year, considering the fact that Stephon Diggs could only really play the slot last year. Tank Dell could not really play the outside X wide receiver role. I do think adding Jaden Higgins, a different stylistic body to the receiver room, really opens up Nico Collins to be used across the field. Matt Harmon said this before, that Nico Collins, the elite separation he has while solely playing the hardest route tree that you could possibly be in. Like, we've talked about X wide receivers like Keon Coleman, for example. Keon Coleman plays the exact same role as Nico Collins. The difference is Nico Collins is so goddamn good that he makes it look easy.
Yeah, no, exactly. And guys like Devontae Adams have been doing that throughout their career. Mike Evans has been doing that throughout his career. It's hard to do. And BTJ, who also probably was in consideration for this pick, also doing the same thing realistically that Nico Collins is.
100%.
I would have gone with Malik Neighbors or Amon-Ra St. Brown. Both of those guys are a slight mini tier ahead of Nico Collins for me. But I do think Collins in half PPR definitely sees a bump because he is a big play guy. He is a touchdown guy. I would put good money that Neighbors out targets him this year. I would put good money that St. Brown out targets him this year. But Nico Collins, touchdown wise, big play wise, maybe outdoes those guys.
Shout out to all the listeners that are in leagues with us, because the Nico Collins argument was bound to happen.
Yes, you did. I'm not going to argue that. In half PPR, you're totally justified taking Nico Collins at the 1-2 turn. I think he absolutely could go there. Honorable mentions, again, we'll get into the second draft. Maybe you could have talked me into Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor. Bucky Irving seems a little high for me. In a start 7, Brock Bowers gains a bit of value too. I don't think I would quite take him this high, but I do think he should go a little bit higher in a start 7 versus like a start 9 full PPR, because the tight end advantage that you get from having Brock Bowers is amplified the less starting spots there are. Again, think about it. 1 out of 7 tight end spots. It's a higher percentage of your lineup than 1 out of 9 starting spots, which is why a guy like Brock Bowers would gain some value. But Danny, let's pivot over to the next draft, which is the deeper draft, the sicko draft, the one that you and I are more accustomed to, the one that you and I are more familiar with, the one that if you guys are drafting a format like this, 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, 2 flex, 1 tight end, and you're not drafting on Underdog Fantasy, you should be, because the ADP will very likely mirror what you'll see in your home league, and doing a bunch of Underdog drafts will get you prepared for your home league draft. So if you guys want to sign up over on Underdog, head on over to the link in the description and in the pinned comment. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up. Get some drafts in. Danny, what have we talked about? Doing drafts on Underdog, specifically if you play in a very similar format to Underdog scoring settings, is like fighting Mike Tyson to train to fight your high school bully in at recess. Like, you're going to be over prepared. You're playing against people on Underdog who understand the format, understand game theory, have their own unique, nuanced player takes. When you go into your home league lineup, you will be laughing at the values that you get if you've drafted 100 Underdog teams or 25 Underdog teams or even 5 Underdog teams to get you some real money exposure, some real money drafts.
Well, that's what I mean. You get practice in. On top of that, you get access to the single best ADP in terms of where the sharps are drafting. You're going to be in rooms in Underdog. I'm straight up. Like, when you're going to start off, you're going to be like, oh my God, like, it's overwhelming. Everybody's taking all the wide receivers. But once you get comfortable, once you settle in, you're going to realize that, oh my God, my league mates are letting these elite wide receivers fall. I just got Travis Hunter in the 7th round of my sleeper draft. He goes in the 4th round on Underdog. You're going to be able to see those patterns and kind of click it in once you're in your draft. Like, oh, if Hunter's here in the 6th round, for example, maybe I should take him because he goes 2 rounds earlier on a different platform.
Yeah, exactly. And Underdog is going to be specifically beneficial to those of you guys who are drafting as similar of a starting lineup format to Underdog. Usually a 3 wide receiver start. You're going to be good to draft on Underdog. And again, the link down below for that is in the pinned comment. Try and win $2 million with us. $25 to $2 million. Best Ball Mania 6. Can't get more fun of a sweat than that. So, Danny, let's get it kicked off. I picked 101 last draft. So you're picking 101 in this draft.
Yeah, and this guy didn't go 101 in the last draft because obviously it was the half PPR, but you get the bigger lineup setting, you get the full PPR advantage. A near 24 PPR point per game score last year, Jamar Chase. I had to witness firsthand Mason get carried by this guy in the Flock League.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. Enough said. They're going to throw the ball more than anybody in football, and Jamar Chase was the Triple Crown last year, attached to one of the 3 to 5 best quarterbacks and maybe the best passing projection quarterback in the NFL this year in Joe Burrow. I am still going to take Bijan this high, even despite running backs, like we said already, being 2 of your 9 starting lineups in an ideal format. But Bijan in full PPR gets a huge bump because of what he was able to do through the receiving game. And that's why I absolutely love him, even in this format. So he's going to be the guy that I pick 102. And it's a pretty straightforward, clear cut and dry case for me.
Yeah, and I mean, we could just go straight to the 103 because I think by no shocker, you may as well just put this guy's name in right now. Sedarian Lamb of my Dallas Cowboys. Now, what I just said about Jamar Chase lapping the field at wide receiver, well, guess what? CD Lamb 2023 literally outscored Jamar Chase's 2024. Top of that, when Dak Prescott's healthy, yeah, maybe it's not a Joe Burrow projection. Maybe Joe Burrow is about the 4,800 yard, 38 plus touchdown range. When Dak Prescott's healthy, you feel confident in a 4,500 yard, 30 plus passing touchdown offense. On top of that, we finally have another vertical X wide receiver presence that we have not had since Michael Gallup tore his ACL. That can only take pressure off of CeeDee Lamb. I do think the offense kind of got overwhelmed. CeeDee Lamb was only really the one above average offensive weapon piece last year. You bring Pickens in, and I do think it's going to have an effect like T. Higgins opens up for Jamar Chase.
Yeah, for sure. And what CeeDee Lamb did in 2023, in my opinion, is no longer possible with George Pickens there, because CeeDee Lamb played at a first-team All-Pro level and was the only talent on the field, and nobody could stop him. That's really hard to do. And I do think that Pickens being present, being able to command targets, will impact his ultimate 2023 upside, but he's still going to be a 20-plus point per game projection.
See, I disagree because I think it can only open him up. Yeah, sure. Maybe he loses 3% target share. He's still going to be a 27% target share player. Chase was at a 27% target share, and T. Higgins was a top 5 wide receiver in points per game. So unless we think George Pickens is going to be a top 6, top 7 fantasy football wide receiver, to me, it only takes away from the Fergusons, takes away from the running back targets, rather than taking away from CeeDee Lamb himself.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a fair argument. I am on the board with the 104. Could go in the Jefferson direction because, like I said, generally in full PPR, 3 wide receiver, 2 flex type leagues, you're going to want to start wide receivers most of the time, 4 or 5 wide receivers per week.
You could be. So are you not?
No, I'm not going to.
Oh,
No,
okay. Okay.
my discussion will be the 2 running backs because I still do think that this is a very clear top 6, and I'm not going to be the guy that is overthinking Saquon Barkley. I don't want to do it. People are always Madden cover athlete and, they can't, or like, it doesn't matter. Saquon Barkley is an absolute beast. He doesn't catch as many passes as Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan will catch. So maybe you could favor Jahmyr Gibbs in a full PPR format for that reason. But again, what plays in fantasy football? Big plays, touchdowns, big rushing yards, extremely high talent, and elite offensive line attached to one of the best, if not the best offense in football. So Saquon Barkley, to me, I'm not going to overthink it. I'm not going to Madden curse it. I don't care. I'm still taking him with the top 3 to 4 pick, and I would have taken him over CeeDee Lamb as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's reasonable. Again, for me, the reason why I can't quite get here on Saquon Barkley in a full PPR is that it comes back to what I said about Christian McCaffrey in the half PPR. To me, both Barkley and McCaffrey are close enough projections if they stay on the field, both of them respectively, that I would need to get Saquon Barkley at a discount because ultimately Christian McCaffrey has like a 15th ADP overall on Sleeper. That's my problem.
Which is fair. And I think that's people are going to get there. People are fading Saquon. By fading, I mean like 1-2 picks so that they don't
love
draft him kind of thing. They're getting there. So what are you doing here? You going Jefferson? You going Gibbs? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I've said on record on this channel before that this guy has a case that by the time he ends his career, he could very well be the number 1 player at his position. He currently averages 9 yards per game more than anybody else in NFL history. So, yeah, I think CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase respectively have higher ceilings because of the pass game projections. Feel more confident in Joe Burrow. Feel more confident in Dak Prescott. But I mean, Justin Jefferson has the highest floor of any wide receiver in fantasy because we've literally seen it before.
Here, let me just solve a problem for you. Never say the word respectfully again because you'll just default to respectively because you say that one way more often anyways. That's an easy solve to the respectively crisis. And anybody who watches the channel knows that you get those two confused at least once a day.
The thing is I literally know both those words, but mentally it just like, because I've done it before, it's just become a habit. You know what I'm saying?
But yeah, Justin Jefferson, full PPR, can't really argue with it. I guess I'm drafting all the running backs and you're drafting all the wide receivers because I guess I'm just going unk mode. You'll see what I do with the next couple of picks. But Jahmyr Gibbs, full PPR, what do I got to say? Like he's on an elite offense. He's going to get all the receiving work pretty much in that offense out of the backfield. And him and Jared Goff have a great connection. And Gibbs too, I think an underrated part of Jahmyr Gibbs is whatever targets Jahmyr Gibbs gets, because he's going to get less targets than say Devon Achane would. They're so valuable, the targets that Gibbs got, because of how Ben Johnson was scheming it up. And I tend to think that they're still going to use him the same way, even without Ben Johnson. And Gibbs himself is just so explosive, so electric in space that he's able to make good on the targets that he does get. So he's a pretty easy pick for me here. And full disclosure, I would have gone Chase, the 3 running backs, Lamb, and Jefferson, even in this format. It's not anything against Jefferson and Lamb. Yeah. I just think these 3 running backs are monsters.
Yeah. And the difference for me is I'd have Jefferson at 4. I would have Gibbs at 5 and Barkley at 6 is how my rankings are. And obviously the top 3 are literally how I have them ranked.
And again, back to 107. This is where we think the first decision point lies.
Actually, I have Lamb over Bijan. Sorry, but that top three. Anyways,
yeah, Lamb over Bijan's ridiculous. But go ahead.
I don't think so at all, considering that I think you can make the case that both him and Jamar Chase have the access to the highest ceiling in the league.
Legendary running back always outscores legendary wide receiver. Continue.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't happen in 2023, did it? Full PPR, did it?
No, it didn't.
That's what I thought. Okay.
But Bijan, as a 24-year-old running back, had a higher ceiling than McCaffrey as a 28-year-old running back when he did it.
And CeeDee Lamb as a 26-year-old wide receiver can very well access what CeeDee Lamb did as a 24-year-old wide receiver.
Anyways, go ahead with the 107.
With that being said, I guess I'm going to be the unk here because Christian McCaffrey is my next highest rated player. Like I said, I literally have Barkley and McCaffrey back-to-back in my full PPR settings. Obviously, in a half PPR, Barkley a little bit more carry volume. I think there's a little bit more of a gap. But in a full PPR setting, like McCaffrey, given the current context of that receiving core, could very well catch another 90 balls.
Yeah, no, he's even if McCaffrey gets limited on the ground, quote unquote, because the 49ers want to keep him healthy, and I honestly think this would be a good thing for them to do, give him the high value touches.
Give him last year's HN role.
You're in the red zone, use McCaffrey. You're in the in between the 20s and it's 3rd and 1, put Garendo out there. It'll be totally fine. Like it's not a big deal to use Christian McCaffrey in that way, but all the targets, all the big plays, all the touchdowns, that's what we wanted a Christian McCaffrey. Keep him on the goddamn field and not in Europe trying to get stem cells.
Yeah, no, you're not lying. Yeah, if he stays healthy, I think we could look back and say, wow, 7th overall, Christian McCaffrey. How did he not go in the top 3?
Yeah, agreed. And this would be the guy that I would have taken at 7, and that is Puka Nacua in full
He's my 8.
PPR. How many wide receivers does Matthew Stafford have to bring to legendary seasons before we realize that Puka Nacua might legitimately have as high of a ceiling as any wide receiver in fantasy football? Matt Harmon's already detailed this dude has elevated his play, his actual physical real life talent into the upper echelon wide receivers in the NFL. We have one of the best, if not the best, offensive schemer calling the plays for Puka Nacua. We have one of the best, if not the best, not just this year, ever, quarterback wide receiver kingmakers when he locks on to his number one wide receiver. Think of the Megatron years. Think of the 2021 Cooper Kupp and 2022 before his injury Cooper Kupp years. We might have that level of ceiling, as in if you don't have Puka Nacua, you're not winning your league. That level of ceiling could be in store for Puka Nacua this year. Yeah. As much as Devontae Adams is still a great wide receiver, this offense could funnel 170 to 200 targets through this dude.
I mean, you just said it, right? Jamar Chase has T. Higgins. CeeDee Lamb has George Pickens. Justin Jefferson has Jordan Addison. Puka Nacua has Devontae Adams. Good offenses will have multiple stud wide receivers on them, but we still have to acknowledge the true number one of those cores. Jamar Chase is the true number one in Cincinnati. Despite as good as T. Higgins is, he ain't Jamar Chase. As good as Pickens is, he ain't CeeDee Lamb. As good as Jefferson or Addison is, he ain't Justin Jefferson. And now I do think Adams is closer to Puka than those guys are to their ones, but that's not against Puka. That's more so pro Adams. I'm drafting Adams everywhere in the 3rd round. I think these two wide receivers are going to lead a very concentrated offense. We might see Matthew Stafford get back to that 2021 level. That season, they won the Super Bowl. He threw 41 touchdowns. I don't think people realize that the Rams were the biggest threat to the Eagles Super Bowl run this year. They were within a touchdown. They looked like they could have beat them.
Yeah, no, they're a legitimate potential top 2 to 3 team in the NFC. Legitimately. Like they're that good. And Puka, like I said, when we look back, if you look back at last year's ADP, the year before's ADP, the year before that's ADP in the 1st round, there was always 2 or 3 right answers every single time. It's like last year, the right answer was Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, maybe one other person who had a great season.
Yep.
There's always 2 or 3 guys that stand out above the rest. And it would not shock me if at the end of the 1st round, if you did not pick Puka Nacua, you are screwed.
Yeah, no, there's that very real possibility. You mentioned that you would have taken him at 7. He is my 8th overall player. So if I had the 8th pick, he would have been here regardless. I believe it's back on me. And this is going to be the closest discussion for me because the next range of guys, the next 4 in order, to be honest. And it's funny because they're all, 4 picks left in the 1st round. Knowing that this is the board now, I think the 9th overall pick would be the worst because I don't see a difference between taking 9th versus taking 12th. Those 4 guys I mentioned, Nico Collins, Devon Achane, Ashton Genty, and Malik Neighbors. I think any of them are worthy of being this 9th overall pick. My 9th overall player is Nico Collins. And you mentioned you would have him a little bit higher in half PPR, lower in full PPR. To me, I'm still looking at a guy that when he was fully healthy, when Stroud was looking like CJ Stroud, was the one keeping pace with Jamar Chase last year. We've had this discussion before. I think Nico Collins is one of the top 5 or 6 wide receivers in this league. And I do think we expect a big time CJ Stroud bounce back. On top of that, with Higgins being added, I think we do see potentially even more slot usage for Nico this year.
Yeah, Nico is not actually even in my 1st round. It's not really much to do with him. He's in a tier with the players that are near the end of the 1st round for me. I just prefer the way I would have it ranked would be I'll take my next rated player, which Malik Neighbors is actually my 8th overall player. So I would have taken him over McCaffrey and Collins. And then I have Achane, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Ashton Genty to close out the 1st round for me there. But Collins, I get it. I understand why you're in. I totally understand it. He is absolutely an elite wide receiver in real life. I just do think that the target total specifically in PPR might not be on par with the likes of Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown, some of the other wide receivers in that range for me. Speaking of, Malik Neighbors, 35% target share as a 21-year-old rookie. Say what you want about his quarterback play right now. It's actually a significant upgrade to what it was last year when he was the wide receiver 6 in fantasy as a 21-year-old rookie. So I don't know. I look at Neighbors and I'm like, yeah, could he have 190 targets this year? He was pacing it last year. He had 170 targets in 15 games.
Well, I mean, we talked about this, but realistically, There's about, I mean, obviously the top four, I think, stand out this year: Puka, Jefferson, Lamb, Chase. But even this next year, wide receivers, like, this is why I love this range of the draft, this 1-2 turn. Being able to pair one of these guys with a couple of the running backs we'll talk about, probably spoiler alert, in the next two picks, just feels absolutely insane to be able to do. I feel like I'm getting 2 first-round caliber players, and one of them is coming from the second round when you're picking in this late first. Speaking of that, 111 here. I actually made a change in my rankings. With the news of Jonnu Smith going, I initially had Devon Achane as my RB6. I had Genty out RB5. I think with Jonnu going off of this team, that is enough of a reason for me to have Achane. I moved him up to my 10th overall player. He would be the guy that I take here. It's pretty simple. You've talked about this before. With Tua Tagovailoa, he was literally scoring 22 plus points per game. I do think that the offensive, like how they move the ball on offense, how the offense kind of worked down the stretch is not what Mike McDaniel wanted to do. We now have evidence that's the case, considering Jonnu Smith is now a Pittsburgh Steeler. And I do think when this offense is fully healthy, when the offensive line's playing well, when Tua Tagovailoa doesn't have his brain mashed up, we have Tyreek Hill, we have Jalen Waddle, we have Devon Achane. Those are the 3 clear players getting touches.
Yeah, not to mention last year, Achane led all running backs in targets, and it wasn't close. It wasn't close. And that was with Jonnu, like you said, running those kind of underneath routes. And if Tua is still going to put that emphasis on, I need to get the ball out quick, I need to be, getting the ball to my first read, my second read, that kind of thing, Achane's going to catch 70 balls. Like, he's going to catch a lot of passes, man. And like we said already in the first mock draft, if the big plays come back from rookie year Devon Achane, because the offense is better, Tua is healthy, Tyreek isn't playing with a broken hand or a broken wrist or whatever, and hamstring pulls for Jalen Waddle and all this kind of stuff, this offense will crush its ADP. Achane will be one of the best picks in the entire first round, or even the second round where he actually goes. He's one of my favorite picks in the entire second round, probably my favorite pick in the entire round, period. He will crush his ADP. And to me, he's worthy of being a top 8 to 10 player after this Jonnu Smith trade. And that is exactly where I have him ranked. He is my number 9 overall player, just behind Neighbors and Nakua for me.
So fun fact, obviously as a rookie, we saw how dynamic he was. 34% of the team carries as a rookie and only 3.4 targets per game. Last year, 49% of the team carries, 34.8 receiving yards per game, 5.1 targets per game. So his overall workload clearly went up. Raheem Mostert, obviously, he was banged up last year, but now he's a Las Vegas Raider. I like Jalen Wright, the prospect. He could work into the mix, but realistically, this is poised for Devon Achane to take on another step in his workload. Why is he not going to be a 19 opportunity, 20 opportunity per game type of back?
I think it's possible that the top 3 running backs in fantasy all came from the 2023 running back class. Bijan, Gibbs, and Achane are the guys. Like, the peak, when you talk about when do running backs peak, when do they give you their best years, it's usually their third season, legitimately. It's usually their third season is the best of their career. And I think Achane, as you and I talked about last year, and people call this nuts, his workload's going up. Everybody's, but Raheem Mostert's still there. It's like, well, what happened? Raheem Mostert.
Why draft Devon Achane when you get Raheem Mostert 7 rounds later?
Tons of people said it, and we were not one of them. And I actually was at the beginning of the offseason, and I got converted a little bit over. So
brought you to the light side, baby. Brought you over.
If Tua doesn't go down last year, Achane would have won people leagues. And even still, he was a top 7 running back in fantasy points per game last year. So I'm on the board here, and this would come down to Genty versus St. Brown. They're my next 2 rated players. Full PPR, I mean, Amon-Ra is as safe as they come. Like, you're talking about a dude that is locked and loaded, 27, 28, 29, 30% target share on one of the best offenses in football, the clear best offense in football last year. But there's a couple things going against Amon-Ra St. Brown that make me actually lean with Ashton Genty here, which is St. Brown coming off like a knee scope. Yeah, I trust him to play through injury. He's usually fine in that regard. However, it's enough to tie break to Genty, and also the Frank Ragnow retirement, the Ben Johnson leaving in the offseason. Jameson Williams' ADP is really, really high. What if he starts to work into that receiving target share of Amon-Ra St. Brown? It's enough for me to go to Genty. And again, maybe people would say this is too risky. Just take the safer player in Amon-Ra St. Brown. He would be my next rated player off the board. I still do have him ranked inside my first round. He is my 11th overall player. It's just that my 10th overall player, Ashton Genty, is still on the board. So that is the direction I'm going to go. And again, in the previous draft, it's pretty straightforward. He might lead all running backs in touches this year, legitimately. Yeah. Top 6 overall draft capital. Geno comes in, good offensive run scheme. Everybody on the offense can run block their ass off, including the offensive line. And Genty quietly could also threaten an 80, 90 target season. Because his second year at Boise State, we saw that receiving target share, and Geno Smith peppered Kenneth Walker his highest targets per game of his college or NFL career combined last year. So Geno is used to using his running backs out of the backfield. And Chip Kelly is also used to using his running backs out of the backfield, evidenced by Trevion Henderson at Ohio State. And going back to his Eagles days, Brian Westbrook and LaShawn McCoy having career highs in target share. So I think everybody and everything is centering around this young running back being the engine of the offense. And of course, Brock Bowers in the passing game.
Well, yeah, I think it's pretty simple. You mentioned the available targets. Obviously, last year, Jacoby Myers, 8.6 targets per game. The 4 years prior, 6.6, 6.9, 7.4, 5.8. Clear peak in his career at that 8.6 per game total. I think that's a lot more of a factor that once they had traded away Devontae Adams, they simply didn't have somebody that can command targets from him. Like Trey Tucker, is he really going to command targets? Like they didn't even have who even was the receiver core last year outside of Myers and Brock Bowers and Trey Tucker?
I actually don't remember. Like I don't remember the third receiver legitimately.
Like I can't even remember, and that goes to show just what that situation was looking like. Maybe, Jack Besh could play a role, but what we're hearing right now is that they kind of view Jacoby Myers and Besh interchangeable. So it does sound like more so Besh is going to be a number 4 wide receiver, taking snaps from Myers right away, taking snaps from Myers when he comes off the field, as opposed to them playing on the field together. And it sounds like the receiver that's actually going to be out there has been Dante Thornton. We've talked about Dante Thornton in the prospect profiles. The one thing he doesn't do is command volume.
Yeah, he's going to run wind sprints. And who's that's going to benefit?
MVS, baby.
Ashton Genty. Ashton Genty is going to be the one who benefits from that. That's the only person that benefits.
You take the 6'3", 4'3" speed receiver that doesn't catch passes. It only opens up space for everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that is the end of the first round in the sharper league format. We did the casual league format already. This is a fun exercise, man. Going through the first round is crucial because you guys might think it's ridiculous for Danny and I to argue CeeDee Lamb versus Bijan Robinson or CeeDee Lamb versus Justin Jefferson or whatever. But guess what? When you're on the clock, you have to make a decision. You can't just be like, I'm going to rank them similar and whoever falls to me. It's like, you have to pick one.
Hey, Bush, I mean, they were so close. I can't really hate myself for taking Breece Hall over Jamar Chase last year, can I?
Yeah.
The rankings are so close. Like, it doesn't matter.
And Justin Jefferson were so close in my rankings last year. I can't hate myself for taking Wilson over Jefferson. Like, you made a wrong decision.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is like people don't want to accept the responsibility. Hey, guess what? If you make a fuck up, own your fuck up. Just like this year, it's like, hey, I can say 14 players deserve to be picked in the first round. Yeah, but only 12 people will. You have to make that decision.
Yeah, and I can say
that's the pressure of fantasy.
My wide receiver 4, it's a group of guys. It's Nakua, it's Neighbors, it's St. Brown, it's BTJ, it's Nico Collins. You got to put 1-4. You got to put 1-4 because if you're on the clock and you have a couple of them on the board and you pick the Garrett Wilson pick of last year, then you're wrong. People probably picked Garrett Wilson over, better players. People probably picked Breece Hall over Jefferson and over St. Brown and over Lamb and over freaking Jamar Chase, like you said. So you ultimately got to make the best picks on the board. And to me, we talked about it in the first mock as well. The best place to pick in a full PPR deeper mock like this is 3 to 5. That's my favorite spot to pick from because you get good picks on the way back in the second round and on the way back in the third round, and you still catch your favorite guy. For you, that's CeeDee Lamb. For me, that's Bijan Robinson or the other 2 running backs usually. And you're able to get one of those guys, and then hopefully maybe a McConkey, a Drake London, or somebody falls back to you on the second round. And even in the third, like I said, there's guys on the board, Chase Brown, Breece Hall, some of those dudes that could fall back to you there.
And I've said it before. I also love the 1-2 turn, getting to pair 2 guys that I absolutely love. I mean, we mentioned, we have 14 guys worthy of the first round, but only 12 can go. It's like, well, if you're picking at the 201, 202, you're going to get access to 2 of those players. And on top of that, I mean, the 3-4 turn this year, like I've quietly been enjoying a lot more. In a typical lineup league, I'm perfectly fine pushing Kittle up there. Maybe you want to take a quarterback in a lineup. Maybe you want to take, Breece Hall's about in that range. Obviously, maybe it opens you up in a home league where if you don't take a running back in that range, Martin Hampton falls back to your 5th round pick. Like there's so many options at that 1-2 turn that I really like this year. I love it in underdog, but specifically even in home league, like when Omar and Hampton's not being valued as a 4th round pick in your buddy's league that you grew up in high school, grew up in college with, like it's free money.
Yeah,
Rice.
Yeah, Rashee Rice, Adams, Mike Evans, even James Cook, Breece Hall, like those guys fall into the end of the third round. Even maybe people are fed up with Garrett Wilson falls down that far too. Like
Yep.
there's a lot of options there. So again, this was just a first round mock. This was how the first round should go based on your specific league settings. If you got some value from this video, leave a like down below. Let us know. We're getting into the redraft season. What do you guys want to see first? Let us know video ideas. We are going to listen to you. If it's a good idea, we'll absolutely make it. And again, if you want to take some of this advice into action right away, specifically this second mock draft, which mirrors Underdog scoring settings, head on over to Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up. When you sign up, you'll get up to $1,000 in bonus funds. If you deposit $50, you'll have $100 on the site to work with. And you will also have bullets in the chamber to start drafting Best Ball Mania 6 teams, $25 entry, $2 million up top to first. Every contest size, price level imaginable is on Underdog. You want to do $3 contests to win big, you can do it. You want to do $5 contests to win big, you can do it. You want to put $500 or $1,000 in one fantasy football draft, you can do that. So definitely check that out. Sharpen you up for your home league drafts. We are back, fellas. It is July. We are ready to talk about redraft fantasy football, and we are excited to do so. Let us know what you thought down below. All of our redraft rankings available on flockfantasy.com. Promo code FSE over there. I meant to tell you this, Danny, as well, but I want to get a best ball downloadable format so that people can download best ball rankings and input them directly into Underdog and draft off of our rankings if they want to. But there is some finicky stuff that you have to do. So I'll talk about that with you after the draft. But anyways, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.